I'm Mayor Tommy Roberts. Welcome back to the Mayor's Table. My guest this morning is Jennifer Breakell, who is the city attorney. And Jennifer, I want to welcome you back. I think this is maybe the second or third time you've been a guest on the Mayor's Table.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good to have you again.
Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about the legal department in general terms, and then we'll move into some more specific questions. But my goal this morning is to give our viewers an idea of the work that the legal department does for the city of Farmington. It's probably intuitive for a lot of people, but I think we can provide a little bit more detail that will help people understand the magnitude of the legal issues that we deal with. It's a very broad set of legal issues, and you have to be familiar with a lot of areas of the law. So I think it'd be nice if we can give our viewers some sense of what the scope of that work is. So if you would, just start out and tell us a little bit about your department in the context of budget, annual budget, and employees, and what those employees do.
So my department, outside of the risk management, manages a budget of about $470,000 a year. That includes our employees and our operating expenses. There's myself, who's the city attorney, and another attorney who's the deputy city attorney. I have a paralegal, a criminal secretary, because we do prosecute cases in my office, and then also a front desk receptionist who deals with Open Meetings Act issues and other various tasks we assign to her.
You've been on the job about 2 years in your capacity as city attorney, is that correct?
Yes, Mr.
About 2
Mayor.
years this
2
month?
years as of January,
Right,
actually.
yeah. So that time flies by pretty fast.
It does.
You've been very busy during that time as well, dealing with a lot of different kinds of issues. You mentioned risk management, and I want you to talk about the relationship of the legal department to the risk management division.
So the risk management division and the legal department work very closely hand in hand. The actual risk management division is located within the legal department at this time, and it has one employee. The risk management division handles all the claims that come in, and so the legal department ends up assessing those claims as well. So we are constantly communicating and working with each other to determine what risk factors we have, what things we can do better, where potential claims are coming from, what things our management groups need to be aware of to prevent any further claims.
So what kinds of events will lead to the filing of claims that are handled by the risk management division?
So it can be everything from, say we have an unfortunate power outage with the electric utility company because a line gets taken down and somebody's refrigerator, when the power comes back on, fries or doesn't work anymore, or their microwave doesn't work anymore. It can be one of our employees could be driving and ends up hitting another individual and we're at fault for that. It could also be something where we end up terminating an employee and then we have a lawsuit in reference to that termination. So there's a wide range of potential claims that can come through.
And so the process would be that a claim is filed through the risk management division. The risk management division would determine whether that is a valid claim or not, make a decision or at least a recommendation as to whether or not the claim should be paid. If the decision is not to pay the claim, then that leaves the claimant with a course of action to take, which could be to drop the matter, or I suppose then take it to the next level and file a lawsuit against the city.
Correct. In our legal division and risk management division always investigate the claims separately to ensure that what's being told to us is the truth and to get the information from the other departments, and then we make a determination as to liability and what we view our percentage of liability is or is not.
So if I'm out in the audience watching this segment of the Mayor's Table, the next question I'd be interested in knowing is how many claims do we deal with each and every year, or say on the average, that initiate at the risk management division level?
On average, there's been an uptick lately because of the bad economy, unfortunately. But on average, it's about 5,000 to 10,000 claims a year that come through. We are not responsible for the majority of those claims because they take the general theory that they name everybody and anybody who could possibly be involved, but that's about what comes through every year that we see.
Okay. And does the risk management division have a reserve of funds allocated to pay claims?
They do. They have their own funds as well as different departments, depending on how those departments' funds are set up, that they have money set aside to deal with those claims, such as public officer liability or wastewater liability. So yes, each department has a fund as well as risk management.
Do you have any idea on the average annual basis of how much money is paid out to satisfy claims that are deemed legitimate?
If you want to include attorney's fees in those claims, it's over $600,000 a year. If you don't include attorney's fees, it's much less.
Yeah, okay. Well, and we understand that City of Farmington is a big business, and there's a cost of doing business. It's not unique to the private sector. Public sector entities also have a cost of doing business.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, we know that there are people out there who see government entities as having deep pockets. And some of the claims that are filed have no basis in the law, and those are the claims that are rejected. There are others that are probably more borderline, and then there are some that are filed where we recognize some responsibility. Almost immediately we'll process the payment of those claims.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk now about those kinds of claims that probably aren't originated at the risk management level, but we just receive some kind of a notice of intent to file a lawsuit, and ultimately a lawsuit is filed. What kind of lawsuits are brought against the city?
So the majority of those claims end up either being employment suits where we've had to terminate an employee, or there's been a separation of employment or a disagreement during the employment, and or matters that have to do with where we've had to use force against an individual, or our law enforcement officers have had to do something to contain an individual. That's usually where those lawsuits end up coming from. We've also recently had some lawsuits from maintenance of intersections that have been alleged that we haven't maintained an intersection, and there's been a really terrible accident where somebody's been severely injured in those accidents.
And does the legal department have a reserve of funds to pay damages that are adjudicated by a court?
Yes, sir, we do.
And what kind of a reserve do we have?
It's in our general budget of the claims management budget, which is about $600,000 a year, which is separate from the legal budget. We have two separate budgets, and so that reserve is in there, and we break that down by line item depending on what type of claim it is, and we determine where to put that money based upon historical basis of where our claims have been coming from each year.
And to give our viewers kind of an example of where we are today, how many lawsuits are we currently defending?
Currently, we are defending about 5.
And what would be the potential aggregate liability of those 5 lawsuits?
Two of them are employment matters, so those are always hard ones to guess what the aggregate liability would be, because you feel like you've done the right thing, but you never know what a jury or a court's going to do. But I would say the aggregate liability total for those in damages and not including attorney's fees is going to be less than $250,000.
Okay. And then we are self-insured.
We are.
And so I'd like you to talk a little about how our insurance coverage relates to our ultimate liability. We have some out-of-pocket expense. Obviously, you've got a reserve for that, but we obviously have some insurance coverage as well. Talk about how those two relate to one another.
So what you mean by self-insured is the city of Farmington is self-insured, where we're not in an insurance pool like some other municipalities are. So we have insurance coverage once a single incident hits $500,000. Up to $500,000, we are ultimately responsible for any of those costs and fees that are related to that claim up to that point. Once it hits $500,000, then insurance kicks in and we will get the money back over $500,000 that we pay out.
And again, in the context of dealing with lawsuits, we know that we have outside counsel employed. So these are non-City of Farmington employees. We have relationships with law firms in the area and in the state who we look to represent us on certain kinds of lawsuits. And then there are other kinds of legal matters that we handle internally. Talk about what distinguishes those two scenarios. When do we farm out our legal representation?
So the general rule that we've kind of used in the legal department, and I've adopted, is that if it's going to require a large amount of resources and is a very specialized area of law that we have outside counsel that specializes in, then we will farm for lack of better terms, farm those out, such as a very complicated employment matter where we've terminated an employee, or an electric utility matter where there's a lawsuit over an electric utility matter that has very much to do with regulation in a very specialized area of law. We will send those out to legal counsel that specialize in those areas of law. If it has to do with a car crash where one of our employees was responsible or where one of our guys got hit by somebody else, we'll handle that internally within our department because that's the type of law that we're very familiar with and we deal with all the time. And it doesn't require as much resources on a limited staff budget that we have.
We mentioned earlier as we started out that the scope of the work that you do is very broad in nature. You're somewhat of a general practitioner. If you were in the private sector, you might be labeled a general practitioner. In this situation, you have a single client, but you have an awful lot to do. So your work can deal with contracts, real property law, torts, any number of issues, civil rights issues.
Yep.
It's very broad. What's your reaction now after 2 years of experience of dealing with that broad range of legal issues?
It's interesting, Mayor. You never know what's going to come through the door, and you never have a dull day, and you just get to practice so many different areas of law. And you kind of have to be the jack of all trades. You kind of have to know so many different areas of law, and you never really specialize in one area, but it keeps you on your toes, that's for sure. And it's a great job.
Mm-hmm. Do you have much turnover in personnel within the department?
We do not. We have had a very, very stable staff, and I am very lucky in that sense. I have a wonderful set of people that work with me.
What do you think the biggest challenge is that you have as the attorney for the city of Farmington?
Maintaining the amount of work with the limited resources we have and getting responses out to people timely.
Are you telling me you could use another lawyer in your office?
One or two, Mr. Mayor, but I understand budget constraints, so we'll keep plugging along until then.
Well, Jennifer, we appreciate the work that you do. It is a difficult job. And again, I continue to emphasize the breadth and scope of the work that our legal department does. We're fortunate that we have good relations with outside counsel that we can farm out issues to when that need arises. But there's a lot of advice that's given from your office to the various department heads, and it's a very busy job. We appreciate your effort there. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close out this segment?
No, sir. Just thank you for your time.
Okay. I want to thank all of you for joining us once again on the Mayor's Table, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next Monday.